Hello, I'm Howard and welcome to Spiritual Shorts. You might notice I'm dressed a little more formally than I usually am, and that's because next month in Australia and New Zealand we observe ANZAC Day. It's similar to Memorial Day or Remembrance Day, often celebrated on November 11th, but ANZAC Day is celebrated on April 25th to commemorate the first time in history that soldiers from Australia and New Zealand engaged in combat. This year I am posting this ANZAC message early so as to allow it to stand alone, not lost in the events of Holy Week. Commemorating the sacrifice of those who served and gave their lives in service of their respective countries, each ANZAC Day offers us a unique opportunity to reflect on the meaning of the word sacrifice. Jesus said, "Greater love has no one than to lay down one's life for one's friends." And certainly we can see a direct application of that passage to soldiers in battle who lay down their lives for their fellow soldiers. It is, in fact, probably the most frequently referenced Bible passage on ANZAC Day. There is a passage from the teachings for the new church that speaks directly to that same love. In dealing with the question of the degrees of the neighbor whom we are to love, Emanuel Swedenborg wrote this: "There is a law written on the human heart that gives rise to the statement, 'All just people say when they are in imminent danger of dying because of an enemy or some other cause. They say that it is a noble thing to die for their country. They say that it is a glorious thing for soldiers to shed their blood for their country. They say this because this is how much one ought to love one's country. But there are many ways the Lord calls us to lay down our lives for our friends, and today I want to reflect on the question of what does it really mean to lay down one's life for one's friends. The key to understanding the faith of the new church is to understand that when the Lord is speaking in the Word, He is speaking directly to each of us. He is speaking to different levels of the mind of the person reading His Word. Sure, we can all understand it is a great and heroic thing for a soldier to do, to throw himself on a grenade in order to save the lives of his fellow soldiers. But in what other ways can we understand the Lord's words to lay down your life? Well, one way is to consider what is meant by a person's life. I'm certain that you can understand that when speaking of a person's life, we are not always speaking of the person's physical life. Often, speaking of a person's life, we are speaking of a person's reputation, or we're speaking of the person's accomplishments. We may even be speaking of a person's legacy. Swedenborg, in Arcana Celestia, meaning secrets of heaven, spoke of a person's life in these terms. He said a person's life is their loves, and what they love, that they also will and intend. And what they will and intend, that they do. This is the essential nature of the person. So laying down one's life could mean laying down the things we love. And by that, we could also understand that by laying down our life, we're laying down our wants, our desires. This kind of sacrifice happens in everyday moments when a parent sets aside personal time to be fully present with their child, when a friend listens patiently instead of rushing to speak, or when a spouse chooses kindness over winning an argument. It can mean volunteering in your community, offering your skills to someone in need, or simply setting aside your plans to help a neighbor. In each of these acts, we lay down a piece of our own life, our preferences, our time, our comfort, to serve others in love. And in doing so, we reflect that deepest kind of love, the kind that gives of itself freely. So, this week and in the month ahead, in honor of those who gave their lives for their country, one way we can honor their memory is to consider carefully how we are called to lay down our lives for our friends. Thank you for joining me for this special episode of Spiritual Shorts. I've included a link below to a recording of the last post being played at the Australian War Memorial in Canberra, Australia. I've also included a link in the description below to a beautiful medley of remembrance by Alla Jones and Russell Watson. God bless you.